Every month, after a shift that left her feet aching and her scrubs smelling of antiseptic and exhaustion, Serena walked 3 blocks from St. Mercy Children's Hospital to a small donation center on Lakeview Avenue. She would sit in the reclining chair, extend her left arm, and look at the ceiling while the needle went in. A few minutes later, she would leave with a small carton of orange juice, the kind with the cartoon sun on the label, and walk back to the bus stop without telling anyone where she had been. She did not know that the bag of AB-negative blood she left behind, rare in its phenotype and matched to a set of antibodies found in fewer than 1 in 10,000 donors, was picked up within the hour and transported to the pediatric ward at St. Mercy. She did not know it was taken to the 7th floor, to a private room at the end of the hall, where a 4-year-old boy named Mason needed it to survive. And she certainly did not know that Mason's father, a man named Carter Voss, who ran a technology empire worth $4 billion and had spent the last 2 years trying to buy what no amount of money could provide, had been searching for her without knowing her name, her face, or a single detail about who she was. She was just a code in a database, a blood type, a lifeline that showed up every month like clockwork and asked for nothing in return. This is the story of what happened when the truth finally surfaced. Serena had grown up watching her mother, Gloria, make things stretch. Stretch $1 into groceries for a week. Stretch a smile into something that looked like confidence at parent-teacher nights. Stretch a single-bedroom apartment in Pilsen into a place that felt, most of the time, like a home. Serena had inherited that quality, without being taught it, the ability to compress herself into whatever space was available, and still function, still show up, still be useful. She was 27 now, and she lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Logan Square that she split with a nursing student she rarely saw before noon. The rent was manageable. The rest of the budget was not. Her monthly take-home after taxes and union dues left her with enough for groceries, the bus pass, her phone bill, and the minimum payment on the credit card she had used during the 6 months she had tried to keep herself afloat while Gloria went through her first round of chemotherapy. There was not much left after that. In the corner of her bedroom, on a small desk she had found on the sidewalk and sanded down herself, there was a stack of textbooks: Gray's Anatomy, Pathophysiology, Concepts of Altered Health States, a spiral notebook filled with notes in her own handwriting, dated 4.5 years ago, the ink slightly faded. She did not open them often, but she did not throw them away. She had been accepted to the University of Illinois College of Medicine at 22. She had gotten the email on a Tuesday morning and sat on the floor of her childhood bedroom and cried, not from relief, but from the particular joy of a thing you have wanted so long that believing in it had started to feel like a kind of foolishness. She had called Gloria at work. Gloria had left early and brought home a cake from the Mexican bakery on the corner. They had eaten it at the kitchen table, just the two of them, and Gloria had said, "You are going to be extraordinary," and Serena had believed her. The diagnosis came 8 days later. Ovarian cancer, stage 3. The oncologist had used words like aggressive and responsive to treatment in the same sentence, which Serena would later understand was a way of saying, "This is serious, but we are not giving up." Gloria had sat through the appointment with her hands folded in her lap and her chin slightly lifted, the way she sat through everything that was difficult. Serena had sat beside her and taken notes. She filed for a deferral from the medical program, then another. By the time the second deferral expired, the medical bills had grown into something that could not be ignored, and the CNA certification she had earned to make ends meet had quietly become her profession. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself that every year, for 4 years, with decreasing conviction, Gloria lived now in a small assisted living facility in Evanston, 20 minutes north by train. It was not a bad place. The staff were kind, the rooms were clean, and there was a garden in the back where Gloria liked to sit when the weather allowed. Serena visited twice a week when her schedule permitted. She brought tea bags, the specific kind Gloria liked, and sometimes a book she thought her mother might enjoy, even though Gloria's concentration had suffered since the last round of treatment. On a Thursday evening in late October, Serena arrived to find Gloria watching a rerun of a cooking show, a mug of tea going cold on the side table beside her. The room smelled of the lotion Serena had brought the week before, something with shea butter and vanilla that Gloria had said reminded her of a trip they had taken to visit relatives in Georgia when Serena was 9. "You look tired," Gloria said, without looking away from the television. "I'm fine," Serena said. She sat in the chair beside her mother and pulled her knees up, the way she used to sit on the couch when she was small. Gloria glanced at her then. "You always say that." "Because I always am." Gloria turned off the television. She did not do that often. She was not someone who made dramatic gestures, so when she did, Serena paid attention. "I know what you're carrying," Gloria said. "I know you think I don't see it, but I do. And I want you to know that I'm grateful. Every single day." She paused. "But I also want you to remember that gratitude doesn't require you to disappear." Serena looked at the window. Outside, the last of the October light was going orange and flat across the rooftops. "I haven't disappeared," she said. "No," Gloria agreed. "But sometimes I watch you, and I think my daughter is so busy keeping everything alive that she's forgotten she's one of the things that needs keeping alive too." Serena did not answer. She reached over and wrapped both her hands around her mother's and held them until the light outside went dark. She had started donating blood at 24. It had begun, as many of the quiet decisions in her life had begun, not with intention, but with proximity. She had been leaving a shift when she overheard a cardiologist in the elevator telling a colleague that the AB negative supply in the Chicago metro area was critically low, that there were pediatric patients in 3 hospitals, waiting on compatible units that simply did not exist in the regional inventory. The cardiologist had said it the way people in hospitals said terrible things, matter-of-factly, already moving on to the next problem. Serena had gone home and looked up the nearest donation center. She was AB negative. She had always known that, the way you know your own shoe size, a fact about yourself that has never required action. The action, it turned out, had simply been waiting for a reason. She went the following Saturday. She donated platelets and plasma on alternating cycles, which allowed her to come monthly, while staying within safe deferral windows. The process took 40 minutes on average. The technician was efficient and pleasant, and told her she was doing a good thing. Serena said thank you, and drank her orange juice in the small waiting area, and then caught the bus home. She went back the following month, and the month after that. After a while, it became part of the rhythm of her life, as unremarkable as going to the laundromat or calling her mother on Sunday mornings. She did not think of it as sacrifice. She did not think of it as heroism. She thought of it as something she could do that mattered, in a city that could sometimes feel very large and very indifferent, which was enough. She donated at the Lakeview Community Blood Center, 3 blocks from St. Mercy, a separate facility with its own records system, connected to the hospital only through the Regional Blood Network's cross-referencing database. Her donation was logged anonymously, as she had requested. She had no way of knowing where it went. She had made a deliberate decision not to find out. Once, about a year into the routine, she had started to wonder, had let herself imagine a specific person on the other end. And then she had stopped herself, because she sensed, with the practical instinct she had developed over years of managing things that were too big to think about all at once, that knowing would change something, would make her count, would make her expect. And she had never wanted to be the kind of person who gave with one hand and kept score with the other. On the 7th floor of St. Mercy, in a private suite at the end of the corridor that the nursing staff referred to among themselves as the Quiet Wing, a boy named Mason Voss had spent the better part of his short life being treated as though he were made of something more fragile than other children. He was not fragile. He was, in fact, remarkably resilient, curious and talkative, and possessed of an unsettling ability to read the emotional temperature of whatever room he entered. He knew when the nurses were worried before they said anything. He knew when his father had not slept. He knew that the word transfusion made the adults around him speak more carefully, and so he had decided, at some point around his 3rd birthday, that the word did not need to frighten him just because it frightened them. He was 4 now, with a gap between his front teeth and a habit of asking questions that the medical staff answered with varying degrees of patience and honesty. His condition, a rare hemoglobin disorder, compounded by an unusual antibody profile, required compatible red blood cell transfusions every 4 to 6 weeks. The compatibility requirements were specific enough that standard AB negative inventory from most regional banks was not adequate. He needed units that matched an extended Rh phenotype profile so uncommon that in 2 years of searching across 3 continents, his father's medical team had identified exactly one consistent source. One donor, anonymous, reliable, present every month without fail. Mason did not know any of this in detail. What he knew was the story the nurses had started telling him gently, to make the treatments feel less frightening, about a woman they called the Blood Queen. She was not a queen in a castle, the nurses said. She was just a person in the city who came every month because she cared about kids she had never met. She did not know who Mason was. She just came, every single month. "Does she know about me?" Mason had asked once. "No," a nurse named Daniel had said. "She just comes because it's the right thing to do." Mason had thought about that for a long time. He thought it was possibly the bravest thing he had ever heard. Carter Voss had not always been a man who felt powerless. For most of his adult life, he had operated under the reasonable assumption that most problems were solvable if you brought sufficient intelligence, sufficient resources, and sufficient will to bear on them. He had built his company on that assumption. He had structured his entire worldview around it. It had served him well. Mason's illness had not disproved that assumption so much as it had revealed its limits in a way that Carter found, even now, difficult to fully absorb. He had hired the best pediatric hematologists in the country. He had retained a medical liaison firm that specialized in sourcing rare blood products internationally. He had made calls to people who owed him favors, people in positions to move regulatory paperwork faster than it was supposed to move, people with access to private inventories and international networks. All of it had yielded, in 2 years of sustained effort, exactly nothing comparable to the monthly delivery from a single anonymous donor at a community center in Chicago. He had asked the hospital to identify the donor. The hospital had declined, citing federal privacy regulations. He had asked his legal team to find a pathway around that. His legal team had told him, with visible discomfort, that there was no pathway. He had asked the donation center directly, offering a substantial financial contribution to their operating fund. They had thanked him politely and told him the same thing. He was a man accustomed to finding the door that other people could not find. In this particular building, there was no door. What there was, instead, was a 4-year-old boy in a hospital bed who fell asleep every night to a story about a woman he had never met, and a father who sat beside him in the dark and tried to remember how to be grateful for the things that were still holding. The first time Serena walked past room 714, she almost didn't stop. It was a Tuesday night in early November, 20 minutes into the back half of a 12-hour shift that had already included a seizure in pediatric ICU, a family in the waiting room who needed a translator that no one could locate, and a supply cart with a broken wheel that she had been maneuvering around for 3 hours. She was carrying a stack of freshly inventoried linen toward the supply closet at the end of the corridor when she heard a sound so small it barely registered above the hum of the ventilation system. A child, crying quietly, not the loud, declarative crying of pain or fear, but the particular sound of a child who has been crying long enough to run out of energy for it. She stopped. She set the linen down on the cart outside the door. She knocked twice, softly, and pushed the door open. The room was almost entirely dark. The only light came from the strip of fluorescent glow beneath the bathroom door and the faint amber wash of the city through the half-open blinds. In the bed, propped against 2 pillows, was a small boy with an IV line taped to the back of his right hand and tears drying on his face. He was looking at the ceiling with the focused expression of someone who has decided that staring at something hard enough will eventually make it less frightening. Serena stepped inside and reached for the wall panel, bringing up the small nightlight above the headboard, a warm yellow, gentle enough not to startle. The boy looked at her. He had dark eyes, wide and watchful, and the stillness of a child who had spent a lot of time in rooms where adults talked around him. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice was hoarse from crying, but steady. "I'm Serena. I work here. I was walking by and heard you." She pulled the visitor's chair a few inches closer to the bed and sat down, unhurried, The way she had learned to move around children who had seen too many people in scrubs come and go too quickly. "What's your name?" "Mason." "How old are you, Mason?" "4." He considered her for a moment. "You're not my regular nurse." "No. I work on a different part of the floor. I just happened to be nearby." He looked at the door, then back at her. "My dad was here. He went to make a phone call. He said he'd be back in 5 minutes." A pause. "That was a long time ago." "Okay," Serena said, without judgment. "Do you want me to stay until he gets back?" Mason nodded. He pulled the edge of his blanket up with his free hand, the small, automatic gesture of a child settling in for something. "Are you scared of the dark?" he asked. "Sometimes," Serena said. "When I was little, I used to think something was living under my bed. I put a flashlight on my nightstand and slept with my hand on it for about a year." Mason considered this seriously. "I'm not scared of the dark because of monsters," he said. "I'm scared of it because it's too quiet. In the quiet, I think about things I don't want to think about." Serena looked at him. "That's actually a very grown-up reason to be scared of the dark." "I know," he said simply. She smiled. "What do you think about when it's too quiet?" He was silent for a moment. Outside, somewhere down the hall, a door closed. The ventilation system cycled. The city moved past in its amber haze beyond the blinds. "I think about the Blood Queen," he said. Serena tilted her head. "Who's that?" Mason shifted slightly against his pillows, the way children do when they are about to tell you something important. "She's a person who gives her blood every month so I can get better. She doesn't know who I am. She just does it because it's the right thing." He paused. "Daniel told me about her. He said she's not like a queen in a castle. She's just a regular person in the city." "That sounds like someone pretty special," Serena said. "I think she's the bravest person in the world," Mason said. "Because she's brave for someone she's never even met." He looked at Serena with those steady, watchful eyes. "Do you think that's the hardest kind of brave? Being brave for a stranger?" Serena felt something move through her chest, a quiet, unnamed thing, like a hand pressed briefly against a closed door. She thought about Saturday mornings on Lakeview Avenue. She thought about orange juice in paper cartons and ceilings she had stared at, and the deliberate decision she had made, years ago, not to put a face to any of it. "I think," she said carefully, "that it might be the easiest kind of brave, because you don't have to be afraid of disappointing anyone. You just do the thing and walk away." Mason thought about this. "Maybe," he said. Then, "Will you tell me a story? Not a scary one." "What kind do you want?" "About something real, not made up." Serena leaned back slightly in the chair. "Okay," she said. "Have you ever been downtown at night? Right along the lake, when it's cold enough that you can see your breath?" "No," he said. "I've mostly been here." "Well," she said, "I'll tell you what it looks like." She told him about the lake in November, the way the water went almost black after dark, and the way the skyline sat above it like a second city made entirely of light, and how if you stood at the right spot on the Riverwalk, you could watch the reflection of the buildings move in the water and feel like you were standing between two worlds at once. She told him about the sound the wind made coming off the water, low and even, like the city breathing. She told him that she used to walk there sometimes after late shifts when she was too wound up to sleep, and that it was one of the few places in the city where you could be completely alone in the middle of everything. She was midway through describing the bridges the way they were lit from beneath, the green tint of the light on the stone, when she noticed that Mason's eyes had closed. His breathing had slowed and deepened. His hand had released the edge of the blanket. Serena sat still for a moment, listening to the quiet of the room. Then she rose slowly, drew the blanket up over his shoulder, dimmed the nightlight by 1 more degree, and moved toward the door. She was reaching for the handle when she became aware of someone in the doorway. Carter had been standing there for perhaps 2 minutes. He had come back from the call, which had run long, as calls always did, because there was always something more urgent than the thing that was already urgent, to find his son's room lit with a soft amber glow and a woman in scrubs sitting in the visitor's chair, her voice low and unhurried, telling Mason about the river at night. He had stopped in the doorway and had not announced himself. Not because he was deliberately eavesdropping, but because something about the scene had arrested him completely, the stillness of it, the quality of her voice. The way Mason had been listening with his entire body relaxed in a way Carter rarely saw anymore. When she turned and found him there, she did not startle. She simply met his eyes with the calm, unreadable expression of someone accustomed to being watched in hospital hallways. Carter nodded once, a small, inadequate gesture for what he wanted to express and did not have words for. She nodded back, and then she was gone, her footsteps quiet on the corridor floor, already pulling the door closed behind her. Carter stood at the threshold for a moment. Then, he crossed to the bed and sat in the chair that was still slightly warm from where she had been sitting, and looked at his son sleeping, and felt something loosen in his chest that had been wound tight for a very long time. Her name hadn't registered there, had been no reason it should. The call came at 6:40 the morning, 11 days later. Carter was in the small lounge at the end of the quiet wing he had taken to, sleeping there on the fold-out couch on nights when Mason was unstable, which had been most nights recently. When his phone buzzed with Dr. Reeves's extension, he answered, before the second vibration. Mr. Voss. Dr. Aaron Reeves had a voice calibrated for delivering difficult information without inflicting unnecessary damage. Carter had come to recognize the specific register it dropped to when the information was serious. It was at that register now. I need you to come to my office. I'd rather speak in person. Carter was in the hallway before the call ended. Dr. Reeves was a lean man in his late 50s, with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and the composed, unhurried manner of someone who had been navigating medical crises for 3 decades. He waited until Carter had sat down before he spoke. Mason's inflammatory markers are elevated this morning, he said. The fever he had 2 nights ago wasn't incidental, it's the beginning of an acute inflammatory episode. His pulmonary function has decreased by 11% since Monday. He paused. He needs a transfusion. Not in 4 weeks. In the next 48 hours. Carter's hands were flat on the desk. How much? 2 units minimum. Possibly 3 if the inflammation progresses. Dr. Reeves removed his glasses from his forehead and set them on the desk. Mr. Voss, I have to tell you something, and I need you to hear it clearly. We have 0 compatible units in inventory. The last available lot was flagged during routine quality screening 2 days ago, bacterial contamination during the storage process. The entire batch has been recalled and destroyed. The room was very quiet. The international alternatives your team has been pursuing, Dr. Reeves continued, have not yielded a match. We have confirmed that with your medical liaison this morning. Another pause. Our regular donor is not due to donate for another 11 days. We cannot ask her to come early without identifying her, and even if we could, the standard deferral period between donations exists for her protection. What are you telling me? Carter said. His voice was level. He had learned, years ago, to keep his voice level when everything in him was not. I'm telling you, Dr. Reeves said carefully, that as of this moment, we do not have a path forward that doesn't carry significant risk. If we cannot secure compatible blood within 48 hours, we will need to begin a high-dose immunosuppressive protocol that carries its own substantial complications. He met Carter's eyes. I am telling you because you need to know, and because I believe you would rather know. Carter sat with that for a moment. Keep trying, he said. Every channel, everything. We are, Dr. Reeves said. We have been. Since last night. Carter left the office and walked to the end of the corridor and pushed open the door to the stairwell and sat down on the top step and put his face in his hands. He had $4 billion. He had a network of contacts that spanned 15 countries. He had, over the course of Mason's illness, called in every favor, leveraged every relationship, and deployed every resource available to him. He had done it efficiently and relentlessly and without self-pity. Because that was what the situation required, and because it was, in the end, the only thing he knew how to do. And none of it mattered right now. Not the money, not the network, not the efficiency. His son was in a bed 40 feet away, and the one thing keeping him alive was something Carter could not manufacture, could not purchase, could not acquire through any mechanism he had ever used to acquire anything. He sat in the stairwell for a long time. The door above him opened and closed as staff moved through. No one stopped. No one knew he was there. At some point, without entirely meaning to, he pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes and let himself feel, for the first time in 2 years, exactly how afraid he was. Serena heard about it the way she heard about most things at St. Mercy sideways, in passing, in the compressed language of people who did not have time to stop moving while they talked. She was at the nurse's station on the 6th floor at 7:15 in the morning, finishing her handoff notes before the end of her shift, when she caught fragments of a conversation between 2 day shift nurses rolling a medication cart past the elevator bank. One of them said 7th floor and AB negative, and they've been calling every bank in the region since yesterday. The other said something Serena didn't catch. The first one said the Voss kid, and shook her head, and they rounded the corner and were gone. Serena sat with her pen hovering above the handoff form for a moment. Then, she put the pen down, picked up her badge, and walked to the elevator. Dr. Reeves's office was on the 4th floor, tucked at the end of an administrative corridor that most clinical staff had little reason to visit. Serena had been there once before, 2 years ago, when she had reported a near-miss medication error that a more cautious employee might have let pass without documentation. Dr. Reeves had thanked her and filed the report without making her feel either heroic or implicated. She had respected him for that. She knocked on the open door. He was at his desk, reading something on his screen with the focused frown of a man trying to locate a specific piece of information that was not cooperating. He looked up. "Miss Serena," he said. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a small recalibration, as though something had just clicked into alignment. "Come in." She sat down in the chair across from his desk. "I heard there's a patient on 7 who needs AB negative," she said. "Extended RH phenotype match." Dr. Reeves looked at her for a moment without speaking. "I'm AB negative," she said. "Extended RH. I donate regularly at the Lakeview Center." She paused. "I'm within a safe window given my donation schedule. I know the timing is tighter than usual, but my iron's been stable and I'd like to be evaluated." Dr. Reeves removed his glasses from the top of his head and set them on the desk in front of him with the careful deliberateness of a man buying himself a moment to think. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes." "How long have you been donating at the Lakeview Center?" Serena studied his face. There was something in his tone, not alarm, not suspicion, but a stillness. The way a person goes quiet when they are holding information they are not certain how to release. "About 3 years," she said. "Monthly, since the beginning. AB negative, anonymously logged." The silence in the office lasted approximately 4 seconds. Dr. Reeves folded his hands on the desk. When he spoke, his voice had the careful, measured quality of someone walking across ice they were not certain would hold. "Miss Serena," he said, "I need to tell you something, and I want to be sure I have your consent to do so before I proceed." She looked at him steadily. "Go ahead." "The patient on the 7th floor," he said, "is a 4-year-old boy named Mason Voss. He has been a patient here, intermittently, for the past 22 months. During that time, he has received regular transfusions of AB negative blood matched to his specific phenotype profile. The donations have come from a single anonymous source at the Lakeview Community Blood Center. When we began investigating emergency donor options this morning, the regional blood network flagged a cross-system match. The donation schedule, the phenotype markers, and the anonymity request are an exact match to your donor record." Another pause, briefer. "You've been his donor for nearly 2 years. You are the only reason he has been stable." The room did not change. The fluorescent light above her remained steady. The sound of the corridor outside continued, soft and institutional. Serena sat very still. She thought about a Saturday morning 2 years ago. The reclining chair, the ceiling tiles, the orange juice. She thought about all the mornings like that one, unremarkable, routine, already forgotten by the time she reached the bus stop. She thought about a boy in a dark room telling her that the bravest kind of brave was being brave for a stranger. She had been sitting 3 feet from him. She had tucked his blanket in. She had told him about the river. She did not cry. She was not, in general, a person who cried easily, not because she had suppressed the capacity for it, but because years of absorbing difficult information in professional contexts had trained her to process first and feel later, in private, when there was time. "There was not time right now. Can I still be evaluated?" she said. Dr. Reeves's expression softened in a way she had not seen from him before. "Yes," he said. "I'll have the team see you within the hour. She asked me to tell you. If you wanted to come, his father is here. She's given her consent for you to know that." Carter was back in the lounge on the 7th floor when his phone rang with Dr. Reeves's extension for the second time that morning. He answered with the tight, braced quality of someone who has already absorbed one piece of bad news and is preparing for another. "Mr. Voss," Dr. Reeves said, "the situation has changed. We have a donor. She came to us voluntarily. This morning, within the last hour." Carter stood up from the couch. "Who?" A brief pause. "With her permission, which she has given, I think this is a conversation better had in person. She's in the donation room on 4. She said you could come, if you wanted to." The donation room was a small, practical space, 2 reclining chairs, a privacy curtain, a shelf with supplies, a window that faced the interior courtyard where the bare branches of a November tree pressed against the glass. Serena was in the chair nearest the window, her left arm extended, a line already placed, when the door opened. She looked up. The man who entered was tall, with the kind of physical stillness that tends to accumulate in people accustomed to controlling their environments. He was wearing a dark sweater and looked like someone who had not slept in 2 days and had stopped noticing. He stopped just inside the door when he saw her, and something moved across his face: recognition, and then something more complicated than recognition. Serena recognized him too. The hallway outside room 714, the wordless nod in the doorway, the chair that had still been warm. He crossed the room slowly and sat down in the visitor's chair against the wall, as though the room had anticipated the need for exactly this. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The machine beside Serena made its quiet, rhythmic sound. The tree outside the window shifted in the wind. "I don't know where to start," Carter said. His voice was lower than she remembered from the hallway, more unguarded. "You don't have to start anywhere," Serena said. "I'm just doing what I normally do." He looked at her arm, at the line, at the slow, steady process of the thing that had been keeping his son alive for 22 months. "You've been doing this for 2 years," he said. "Every month." "Without knowing." "Without knowing," she confirmed. "Did you ever wonder," he asked, "where it went?" Serena was quiet for a moment. Outside, a cloud moved across whatever weak November sun had managed to surface, and the light in the room shifted slightly. "Once," she said, "early on, I started to let myself imagine a specific person." She glanced at him briefly, then back at the window. "And then, I stopped. Because I knew that if I put a face to it, I'd start keeping track. And I didn't want to give like that." Carter was quiet. "How do you give without keeping track?" he said. It was not a rhetorical question. He was genuinely asking. "You just don't look," Serena said. "You do the thing, and you walk away, and you trust that it matters, even if you never find out how." Carter sat with that. The machine made its sound. The tree moved. "I want to do something," he said finally. "For you. For your mother." "I looked into her situation. After Dr. Reeves told me who you were. I know about her treatment costs. I know what you've been carrying." He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, and she could hear in his voice the frustration of a man whose primary tool has just been revealed as inadequate. "I have resources. I have the ability to change the material reality of your life in ways that would take me very little effort. I need you to let me do that." Serena looked at him. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I owe you my son's life." "No," she said. Her voice was not unkind. It was simply precise, the way she was precise about things that mattered. "You owe Mason your presence. That's the debt that's actually outstanding." She held his gaze. "I've sat with him twice now. I've watched him wait for you to come back from phone calls. He doesn't need another person managing things on his behalf. He needs his father in the room." The silence that followed was different from the silences before it. Those had been pauses. This was something landing. Carter sat back. He looked at the window, at the bare tree, at the gray courtyard below. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "I've been so focused on keeping him alive," he said. "I think somewhere along the way, I started treating his life like a problem I was solving, something I could fix if I just found the right lever." A pause. "He's not a problem." "No," Serena said. He's a 4-year-old who's scared of quiet rooms and thinks the bravest thing in the world is being kind to strangers. She looked at him. He told me about the Blood Queen, by the way. That night in his room, he said she was the bravest person he'd ever heard of. Carter made a sound that was almost a laugh short, involuntary, the kind that escapes before a person has decided to let it. He talks about her constantly. She sounds remarkable, Serena said dryly. This time Carter did laugh, briefly and fully, and it changed his face entirely, loosened something that had been set hard for a long time. Let me help you, he said, not as a transaction, not because I'm settling a debt. He looked at her directly. Because you spent 2 years quietly holding something open for my son, and I'd like to do something that matters in return. Let me find out what that is. Serena looked at the window for a long moment. She thought about the textbooks on the desk in her apartment, the spiral notebook with the faded ink, the acceptance letter she had never framed, folded in a drawer, from the University of Illinois College of Medicine, dated 4.5 years ago. She thought about her mother, sitting in the chair by the window in Evanston, the mug of tea going cold, saying, "My daughter has forgotten she is one of the things that needs keeping alive. There's nothing I want from you," she said slowly. "But there might be something I stopped wanting from myself a long time ago, because I convinced myself I couldn't have it anymore." She paused. "I'm not sure those are the same thing." "They're not," Carter said. "Tell me." 3 months later, on a Tuesday morning in February, a courier arrived at Serena's apartment in Logan Square with an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead from Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. It confirmed her enrollment in the MD program beginning the following September. Full funding secured through an anonymous gift to the school's Access Scholarship Fund. At the bottom, below the registrar's signature, someone had added a handwritten line in blue ink. From a father who learned something important about the difference between solving problems and being present for them. She read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and set it on the desk beside the old textbooks and sat down in her chair and called her mother. Gloria answered on the second ring. Her voice carried the slightly careful quality it always had at this hour, alert, ready, the instinct of a woman who had learned that calls could mean anything. "Mom," Serena said. Her voice was steady. "I have something to tell you." A brief silence. Then Gloria said, softly, "Tell me." And in that pause, before the words, before the explaining, in the small held breath between one thing and the next, Serena heard her mother already beginning to cry. Not from fear, from the sound of a door opening that had been closed for a very long time. Outside the window, February light moved across the rooftops of Logan Square, pale and thin and persistent, the kind that arrives just before winter finally decides to let go. In a private room on the 7th floor of St. Mercy Children's Hospital, a boy named Mason Voss was sitting up in bed with a set of colored pencils and a large drawing pad, working on something with great concentration. The drawing appeared to be a city at night, tall buildings, a dark river, small figures standing on a bridge, and above all of it, a sky filled with more stars than the city ever actually showed. His father was sitting beside him, not at the window, not on a phone call, not managing anything, just sitting there, one hand resting lightly on the edge of the mattress, close enough that Mason had reached over at some point, without looking up from his drawing, and rested his small hand on top of his father's. Neither of them had moved since.